Hi. This is an added principal's coffee, especially because right around this time is the end of the first quarter. Students will be getting their first set of first quarter grades from their teachers. And in 7th grade, there's some significance because after the first quarter in math, students will have more of an opportunity to engage in their pathway in mathematics. As 7th graders, they will be given opportunities to do extension activities, and there will be an ongoing conversation with the teacher and the student about how they're doing in math. And by the end of the year, after these 3 quarters coming up, there'll be more of a sense of what the best placement is for a student in 8th grade, whether they'll be in the pre-algebra or they'll be in Algebra 1A. So we decide now is a really good time to have a conversation with Mrs. Pellegrino about math. Before we move to Mrs. Pellegrino, here's the clicker. I like to always remind everyone about our essential question. We want our kids to be really involved with their active learning, taking risks. We talk about it all the time, and I think this actually is an important component of the mathematics pathway. Students sometimes don't want to do the extension activities because it could require that they don't do as well as they're used to. If they're used to getting very high A's and they're doing an extension activity, they might make mistakes. Encourage them to do this. Now is the time to figure out what their comfort zone is, what their mathematical ability is, and taking risks. That's when the synapses in the brains fire up when you make a mistake. If you're getting hundreds, you're doing awesome, but you're also not making those mistakes that allow you to adjust and learn. We also want our kids to be appropriately challenged. That's also important in this math opportunity. This gives us a sense when a student tries and either is successful or struggles and is successful or can't do it, gives us a sense of what the appropriate rigor is for them for this year and next year. And within all that, sometimes there's some safe discomfort. It's okay if they're struggling a little bit as long as they have the supports and the persistence that allows them to be to feel good about themselves. But we also want to make sure we support the balanced, healthy mindset. I also just want to take a moment to thank the PTSA. Mr. Ancona, I know you just come here, but can you come up here for a second, just talk about the outsiders before we step into the discussion about math. Mr. Ancona took, I was not able to go, but Mr. Ancona was.
So I'd like to thank the PTSA for sponsoring us going to the outsiders. Mrs. Ferraro and Mrs. Dawes last year wanted to take the current 8th grade, but we weren't able to do it because well, it was just a short time. So over the summer we planned with the PTSA to take this current 7th grade to the outsiders.
On Broadway.
On Broadway, so taking 200 of your closest
Yeah,
friends to Broadway, where the sidewalk is like this big, is a challenge. Something that we've never done before. Taking a
but
grade
we would
level,
do it again. It was so great.
a grade level to Broadway, but it was so great, and the kids had such a great time. It's really interesting to hear kids talk about books, right? On the way out, they're like, that book was nothing like the play, and they're comparing and contrasting, and then other things about the characters, and the cohesion between their X-pods, right? So the time that they had with their X-pod and with their X-pod leader.
Because they went and they were organized by X-Pod. So this was like a little journey with their X-Pod group, which when we talk about the trips, whether it's DC or Boston, we talk about how invaluable that is for team building and community building. And I didn't see this coming, but this experience was also a team building experience, just in the mere fact that they were...
And that you had to navigate walking back to the buses, 3, 4 city blocks, staying together while people are trying to get in between you. So it was a great experience. It was a great trip. It's something that we will hopefully do next year again. The play is on for, I think, another year.
But thank you to the
Broadway.
PTSA. It really was wonderful.
Thank you.
And thank you for making the trip.
So it took us 2.5 hours to go down, and 2.5 hours to come back.
Because when you hit the city.
Right. Basically, when you hit below 70th Street, then it's a crawl for hours. And until we left 70th Street, there was a crawl.
Can I say that there's a text chain with all the teachers when you're organizing all this? It's really helpful if you're on the same text chain of, as bus 3 is set, but within that, the next day, everyone was thanked for doing it, and then Mrs. Veza, who runs the Boston trip, said, if you want some more of that experience, come to Boston. And then what did you say?
And then I said, the trip to Boston will be a lot shorter than the trip to Boston. Which is true, it only takes us 3 hours to get to Boston.
It was really wonderful, so thank you. Okay, so Mrs. Pellegrino, thank you so much. This is such an important time for us to learn about our math program and your leadership. I do think that this is probably the greatest leader of mathematics that we've had, Dr. Kaltenecker. I hate to say that because he was the leader, but so maybe it's just their time. But anyway, your leadership and your vision has allowed such progress to make so that our kids can engage in math really meaningfully, so thanks.
Yeah, and I tell Kim I'll take any opportunity to speak about math, so.
And come to Boston.
And maybe, it's the Boston one or the DC one that always conflicts with I teach AP Calc, and so it always conflicts with when that exam.
Oh, so Washington conflicts because it's early.
Oh, so then maybe that's the one, so maybe Boston.
You're in.
All right.
We all heard it.
You all heard it, and it's televised. I'm going back now. All right, so if you look at the screen here, I like to start with these pictures because they highlight some of the work that we've done in the past 10 years around rich tasks. So rich tasks have actually gained a lot of momentum and popularity in the math world thanks to a book called Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics, which is research-based and kind of took off in the past couple of years. We've been doing rich tasks for a long time, and what a rich task is a low floor, high ceiling task so that anyone can enter it. So if you have a group of students that is very diverse mathematically, anyone can access that material and kind of take it to where they need it to go. The other benefit of a rich task is it might be very unassuming on the surface, but it actually leaves a lot of what we call math residue, which kind of gives you that feeling to it, that you can pull from the remainder of the year. So that's what our work is grounded in. Now, on to kind of the main event, which is what people tend to have a lot of questions about, which is our two pathways. So right now, if you have a 6th grader or a 7th grader, they are taking Math 6 or Math 7, right? So everybody is together. As Ms. Lappel alluded to, going into 8th grade is either pre-algebra or Algebra 1A with the A standing for advanced. So it is a more advanced course than what you would see as a general algebra course. So for the pathway one, I'm going to talk about that first. That goes through high school with advanced geometry, advanced algebra 2 trig, and then by the time students get to junior year, if you see the name of the class, it's called Advanced Pre-Calculus / Calculus. So I always make the analogy that the advanced pathway is like a broken clock, in that content kind of moves quicker each year and the content is necessarily moved down, so that by the time students get to junior year, half of the year is spent in pre-calculus, but half the year is actually spent in calculus and even more advanced calculus topics. Some schools will do it where they will just kind of offer a 2-year BC Calc class. Different places have different kind of ways about it. I think our advanced pre-calc class is really quite rigorous. It's one of the most rigorous courses we offer at Byram Hills. And the colleges kind of know that looking at our course catalog. So this approach we feel like has worked really well, and the students are actually very well prepared to take BC, which is where that pathway, the intention is to culminate. Interestingly, I've been up to a bunch of different engineering schools to talk with folks there just about, you know, what are you seeing and what are you looking for students that are coming in, having been an engineering major, but it's been, you know, some years since I was in school. Just want to make sure that we understand and we're preparing students well. I can tell you, I've seen math on the walls there, on the chalkboards. I've walked past specific problems saying, oh, I just gave that to my students. And I've talked with our approach, and I can tell you they're wholeheartedly on board. I can also tell you anecdotally, every year we have students come back, alumni at the high school, and say it's always the same message. My kid is so much better prepared. I was so much better prepared than my roommate, than my friend, than my this, than my that. I'm tutoring other kids now. I'm sharing my notebooks from high school. So I think we really pride ourselves as a department on the foundation that we give students. Now, that said, we have the second pathway, which the idea is also to build that foundation. So the students will go through pre-algebra as 8th graders. Pre-algebra and algebra being, I can say as someone that's taught calculus again for many years that I won't disclose, the greatest predictor of success in calculus is a student's algebraic skills. By the time they get to calculus, the calculus piece itself is usually not where students struggle. Where students will struggle is the ability to put those concepts together, because oftentimes you will see a problem and you'll have to start pulling on years of experience to know what to do with that problem, because it's not going to be as straightforward as a problem might be in algebra, where someone explicitly says, do this, solve for X, solve for Y. So that pathway goes into our 3 and 2, which I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide. And the intended goal for that pathway is to study AP calculus or a non-AP calculus. So that brings me to like myth number 1. So if I was going to be the biggest myth buster here, it is that if you go in the second pathway, you can't take calculus. I hear that often. It's not true. So anyone that's not here, spread the word as much as you can, send some text messages. The second pathway, you can also take AP calculus. It's just not AP calculus BC. So if you say, well, what's the difference between AB and BC? AB is 1 semester of college calculus. BC is 2 semesters of college calculus. That's the difference. I can tell you anecdotally, it's not that, okay, to get into a certain college, you have to have BC. There are times that students that are in AB or a non-AP calculus have gotten into places that, students in BC don't. So it really is about your kind of whole application. So if you're making decisions, I always like to say that as well. Don't let that be a driving force. I heard a yes. My guess is maybe we've heard that as well. Okay. So the second pathway. So it sounds kind of, a little different from probably what you're used to in high school. Like, how could you just take 3 years and put it into 2? Not every school around Westchester will do that. We did it slowly, purposefully, and thoughtfully. So we didn't jump right in. We spent years kind of studying the curriculum, doing the focus groups, studying the standardized test. We've restudied the standardized test because, as you may or may not know, the SATs have changed in the past year or 2, so now they're in the digital version, and like adaptive testing, so that's informed our decisions as well. So we took a look at what is required for 3 things. 1, the SAT and the ACT, because we know that is important to our students. It's not that we're here just to prepare you for a test, but we know it's important to you as parents. It's important to our students to do well on these tests. The second is knowledge for science, so knowing that things like chemistry will require certain mathematical concepts such as logarithms, and so we might say, okay, they're going to need that for science, so let's let that inform the order in which we're going to teach something mathematically. And then the third is prerequisite knowledge for calculus. So I can say there's many math topics that I love to teach. Not all of them are vital for calculus. Some of them kind of go off into other branches of mathematics. So we had to make some tough decisions. And when I say tough, I mean, it's like tough for math teachers, to choose between 2 topics you're really passionate about, but one might be more necessary than the other. So we really pared it down to the topics that we felt like were absolutely vital. And that's what informed our curriculum. So in addition to that, we always take a look at New York State standards and then local and national standards. The New York State standards for math actually change quite frequently, usually every couple of years. Right now, New York is in the Next Gen standards, and that is also what informs it. I will say the Next Gen standards for some of the classes, so for example, Algebra 2, when it first came out, did not have any of trigonometry. And so that to us was kind of a deal breaker, and we said, okay, well, our students are looking to study calculus. So sometimes we might make those decisions locally, and interestingly enough, New York State, 2 or 3 years later, is recently changing their exam because they're saying, hey, we don't have trigonometry. So we don't just let the state or national guidelines kind of dictate, we make our local choices for what's good for our student population, because that might not be what's good everywhere. Okay. So what goes into this criteria for placement? So we're really looking at a variety of factors. We're looking at how is the student performing in class. We would expect if a student is demonstrating readiness for acceleration that they're really performing at a high level in class. And so we've kind of put that bar at like a 93 or above, showing that they're mastering the content that has been given to them. We also will have extension questions. They have started to see some extension questions, but as Ms. Lappel alluded to, the quarter two start is really where they start to get counted towards our information for acceleration, because we don't want to kind of, teach someone to drive by just putting them in the car and driving. We want to give them some exposure to it and then have it be something that we're looking towards. And then of course, it's not like, okay, you didn't take this one extension on December 14th, so that's that. We really just look at it over the course of the 3 quarters. How often are you taking advantage of extension opportunities and how are you performing on them? You've probably seen in the portal the standards feedback. If you look at our 7th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers, you will see in the portal as well that standards feedback on how they're doing, like meets expectations, exceeds expectations, so that will also come into play in the placement decision. And then last but certainly not least are the student skills. So the student skills are there really because, as I mentioned, the A pathway is like a broken clock, so it moves quickly and with depth. So we really want to make sure that a student is independent enough to be able to have that be part of their responsibility at that time. And if they're not, that's fine, because there's going to be another opportunity at the end of 9th grade. But just making sure that that readiness is there so that they can do that kind of work. Yeah.
Sorry. Does this apply to 6th graders too? Like, are
So
we starting?
6th graders will all go into Math 7.
Okay.
So they
it's
will
Math
be
7
given,
that this all
right,
really.
so they'll be given different opportunities for extensions, and they'll have kind of, mild, medium, spicy type work or challenge questions, but it's not used as a formative
This is more
assessment.
7th grade focused.
And then there are still the extension questions going into 8th grade, both for challenge. As part of we kind of have what we would call like an embedded honors type program where we give you a certificate of distinction at the end of 8th grade if you've done a certain number of points towards that for extension, for example, doing extension questions. So there we go. That brings us to that slide. So that's something that I think we're in our third or second. Like we kind of did like informal first year, then we did a formal second year, now we're in our third. I believe other disciplines are looking into this as well,
So
right?
here's the thing, when we challenge our 8th graders, sometimes they're like, well, why should I do this extra assignment? What does it mean? And there's truth to that, but on the other hand, that shows are they ready or not. Like if you don't want to do it because you're doing it for something instead of the love of math, and I know that's a really mature take on it, right? So the teacher said, Kim, wouldn't it be great if we could recognize kids who do a little bit more? And so the math department started this because they knew that the students were doing a little bit more. They were challenging themselves, and we wanted to kind of honor that and reward it. So at the end of the year, they'll be recognized for distinction in mathematics. There are other departments. We kind of want to expand this out. But here's the perspective. We also don't want kids to do it just to get things. It's this fine balance, right? You want to encourage it, you want to reward it. You don't want to make it so competitive that then it becomes a competition of who can get the most recognitions for distinction. So we want to just make sure as we move forward with it, it is feeding the right component of what we want our kids for the emotional well-balanced piece. So that's what we're looking at. And this is a way to honor the kids that have done more and are pushing themselves, but they aren't in that Algebra 1A because they will be in a couple years in the main pathway.
But still, like Kim said, still recognizing their achievements and
Does it affect their 9th grade placement in any way?
No,
no.
but
Like
in
the
some
ninth grade
ways, if they're
teachers know,
doing
right,
if they're
done.
doing it, they're preparing themselves for it.
Absolutely, but
right?
they're not
And
put in a different section.
No,
or
good
anything
question.
like that.
Good.
Yeah. Questions? So as Kim said with the essential question, and this has really been something that is core to mathematics, above all else, like we're really looking for students to problem solve and to take risks and to push themselves. We always make the analogy to students, like if you go to study engineering and you go to build a bridge, no one's going to say to you, like, here's step 1 to building a bridge, here's step 2 to building a bridge, right? You kind of have to figure that out on your own, and hopefully test it thoroughly before somebody goes on it.
And go through many iterations and fail a few times, right?
Many. And you know, my husband works in the startup industry. We both were computer engineers by trade, and I will tell you, the motto there is not to never fail. It's to fail often and fail quickly, and to adapt. So that is kind of our overarching philosophy in mathematics. We're looking for you to try things, to be a risk taker, to make those adaptations, because as Kim said, that is how the brain grows. I mean, that's just research based. The brain grows in 2 times, once when the mistake is made and the second when the mistake is realized. And that is how, how it grows, but also I would venture to guess how you beat Alzheimer's or things like that, right? So that's part of just promoting that healthy mindset and really looking at math not just as I need to memorize a bunch of steps. It's used as a tool to understand the world and even to make arguments, right? Okay. So what do we see from this approach in the classroom?
This is my favorite piece, right? This is all the, yeah.
We really value multiple approaches. So you will often hear teachers, you might see on homeworks, like, what's another way to solve this? Or this person did this, but this other person did that. Why did they do this? Why did they do that? We've really moved away from that, like, mentality of us in elementary school, where it's like, this is long division, this is what you do, you put these numbers here, you put this number here, you multiply, and like, you're not quite certain what you're doing or why you're doing it, you just know that you're doing it and you're getting an answer. So we're moving away from that to really understanding why do those methods work, and if one method isn't available to you in that moment, either you forgot it or it just doesn't seem to lend itself to the problem, there's other methods that are there. I can tell you wholeheartedly, as someone that is the teacher at the other end of the train line here, a lot of times that is what makes one student more successful than another in calculus, because I always say, like, you have to kind of let the calculus problems speak to you, and you have to listen to them. Not actually, but you have to get a sense, right? You have to get a sense of where the problem wants to go, and how you're going to bring it there. And it's not always obvious, but the more you have of this background and trying these different things, the more your brain attaches to it. So interestingly, if you look at the research around people that are chess players, anybody here have children that are chess players, right? So if you asked a chess player, if you showed a chess player, an avid, like a grandmaster, certain positions that would be known positions, and then you asked them to recall those positions after they could do it with ease. But if you put the pieces in random positions that it never would have gotten there from an actual chess game, they do marginally, if not the same, as an everyday person. So it's the exposure to those chess positions over time that is causing that ability, not some sort of like, well, I can just take any board and memorize it at any point in time. So that's really what we're trying to do, is get them exposed to different things as much as possible, and to store that in their brain so that later on they can say, oh, I remember that chess position, or I remember this math problem that kind of looks similar, and I'm going to apply what I did there here. Students are always self-assessing. As Kim mentioned, we do have kind of formal check-in points with the teachers, but there's also a lot of informal check-ins. You will see things in the comment section. If you've not been used to that, if there's like a little, what are those called, the bubble out boxes, you can mouse over it. Sometimes there's more information there. And students are always reflecting on how they're doing with particular problems or how they can improve. Flexibility in instruction, you will oftentimes see different things happening in a math classroom at the same time. So some students might be working on a review problem set, some other students might be working on an extension opportunity, and some other students might be getting kind of small group instruction. So we've really been able to tailor the instruction in the math classroom so that we meet individual students where they're at the best we can. And the nice thing is to this approach is it's not a one-size-fits-all, and I can tell you as someone that has a mathematically, inclined oldest son, and one-size-fits-all, I know didn't work for him, and it doesn't work for other kids. So we really like to try to bring in an approach that's going to meet students where their readiness is at that moment in time. And if it's here, that's great, and if they need help, that's fine too, and we're going to help them get there. So with that said, sometimes you will see students accessing mathematics that is beyond the grade level because they're ready for it. And if they're ready for it, we'll give it to them. Okay. Brings us to questions.
Everyone's good?
Pretty comprehensive.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. Every year I learn something new, or I get better language on how to explain the project. I hope that everyone understands. All that we do is to make sure that every child is in the right place, challenged appropriately. And there's a balance, middle school is just topsy-turvy, so our job is to challenge them and also make sure that it's safe discomfort. You can be uncomfortable, but you have to know that you are supported and you're cared for and that you're not alone. That's all middle school is about. Are there any other questions about anything else going on at the middle school? We talked about the Outsiders. We have the concerts coming up. It's becoming concert season, which is wonderful. We see the growth in all of our music players. The play has started, so we know the kids are involved with that. Modified sports. There's going to be some sports coming up for the winter season. And then the trips are coming up in the spring, so please keep your ears and eyes open to any volunteering. Yeah?
When is the first commit for the DC trip due? I forgot. I know
It's coming soon.
First week in December.
Yep.
And that's check, credit card, how do we?
Check to check.
Check.
Okay.
Questions?
Yeah, going back to the math. Now, do you have, what's your take on all this extra math, like either Kumon or Russian math or the art of problem solving or whatever else is out there, Singapore math, this math, that math? What's your take on these?
I will tell you as a parent
Yeah.
of a child that is, I'm trying to use another word than gifted, but who's accomplished mathematically. I sent him to RSM for a year to take 2 classes, but I had a very specific intention in sending him there. And I will tell you, the thing that pushed me was when he came home from 5th grade at the end of the year, after having cleaned out, so 5th grade for us is middle school, having cleaned out his locker. And I looked at his notebooks, and they were all blank for the whole year in every subject, with the exception of the ones where there were either little drawings or pages ripped out so that he could make his little tchotchkes. Now, he had done very well academically, but I said, I need you to really learn that skill set of sitting and taking notes. And so he did that. And I will say for that, a place like RSM was great. I've heard other students go for remediation, and they found it great. I think it depends on what your intent is in that particular realm. I can tell you from a college perspective, going all the way up through high school, my understanding is they're kind of hip to students like taking coursework just to take coursework, math or otherwise. What they want to see are, it's like not well-rounded students, but not well-rounded students, right? I think they're looking for large spikes, is how they would describe it, right? So you have a passion, and you're really following that passion in a specific way. So if you're doing it, for that reason as well, I would say, for sure, like I have a student right now, or a couple of students that spend their summers and weekends doing things mathematical because it interests them and they love it. And I think that's great. So I think it really comes down to the intent.
Mm-hmm. Do you notice any of the kids, like if they're doing any of these extra math, like their skills are better, or are they getting lost in, because they're maybe 2 years ahead because they started these programs and they're not?
So I think some of the things that can happen when sometimes it happens inadvertently, right? So it happens when you take coursework formally. Sometimes it also happens between math and science, interestingly. So you might see a concept, for example, like I'll use calculus, for example. Like I have a lot of students in AP Physics. They'll have seen a concept in AP Physics mathematically, but from a physics perspective, you need to abstract away the math because you're looking to use it in a particular applied setting. So they'll then say to themselves, I've learned that math. But you haven't really learned it, right? You've learned enough so that you could execute a particular problem, but you don't necessarily understand the mathematical why. A lot of the times that can happen with outside work at lower levels, right? They'll take a course somewhere and say, oh, I've learned that. You've learned pieces of it. And then the danger becomes, once someone says, I know that, the brain isn't really, do you know what I'm saying, connecting to it in the way that it should. If that answers your question.
Great.
Can I ask the annoying AI one?
Yeah.
So, you know, like in Wampus, like they had to learn multiplication. They were like, well, I have a calculator, right? And so now they've got access to things like Google Maps
Yes.
or other. So just, I mean, is that something that you guys talk to them about, like ethically, and just say, you know, do your own homework? Is that something that?
So we actually just spent our department meeting creating our AI guidance document for mathematics. So, and that I believe, so there's work that Kim and Angela are doing with each team, and then there's also a document that Dr. Kaltenecker is going to be putting up on the district site for all the different disciplines, and so we just finished that for mathematics. I think, you know, for us, photo math has been around for a while now. I think we can tell a lot of times if someone's used photo math, so that is actually something where a delta
I'm not
math.
trying to get at catching somebody. I'm getting back to the point that they're like in middle school. Like, how are we helping them to understand that? Because
That's
you
where the
don't-
document helps,
Yeah.
right? So that was our whole goal in creating that document, is to say to students, it's like a red, yellow, green. Like this would be, or actually it goes red, yellow, green this way. This would be what is considered unacceptable in the math classroom, and again, every discipline will have theirs. This is, yellow is teacher permission, so it depends on the context. And so what's interesting for us, for mathematics, so asking for sample problems is for us a yellow and not a green, which would be acceptable. So you prima facie might say, well, that's interesting, like why isn't it in the green? It seems perfectly okay to ask ChatGPT for math questions, except that ChatGPT hallucinates. And that's not a me term, that's the industry term for it. And they will give you incorrect math. It's just not good enough yet. Will it be? Probably at some point, but that time is not today. And so for us, that's in a yellow section. Because what you want to make sure is that you do check with your teacher, because if the AI has given you inaccurate information or inaccurate problems or inaccurate solutions, like we want to make sure we're staying on top of that and not just saying, oh, it's in the green light, you can kind of do that on your own.
But they do have access to those in school.
So for school, we are very restrictive in terms of any technology that students have access to. So they do not have access to chat and myriad other technologies that would not sign our privacy agreement. So what they would have access to are things like school AI, other things like that that have entered that privacy agreement with
And if
the
they're in the
school.
classroom and they're doing that, we also have Go Guardian,
Go
which
Guardian.
allows us to see what they're working on at the time. Are there ways to get around it? Yeah. A lot of times you can tell when a student who, you know who they are. That's the beauty of the middle school, right? You know your kids. So then if they're doing something that just seems like it doesn't align with who they are or what they know, you can have conversations with the kids. And you can also encourage them sometimes when there are opportunities to get assistance in math using some sort of additionally. But this is where we've landed for all of AI at the middle school.
Right.
This is such a crucial time for skill development, to become a writer, to learn how to write. If you're allowing something to write for you, you have no idea what your true voice is yet. So our work is to make sure kids know and to articulate what is okay to use and what is a yellow and what is absolutely not. And then again, that little safe discomfort, if they do something that, and they use something that isn't helpful, it's addressed with conversations, sometimes consequences if it means that it wasn't their work. But again, all the way along, it's not about a gotcha, it's more about learning why it's so important to do it yourself and going through that pain, because taking the risks, making the mistakes allows us to grow.
And I will say, my seniors, for what it's worth, will say I would never use chat for math. Not from an ethical standpoint,
It's not useful.
but because they say it's wildly inaccurate.
Yeah.
And they know it by that point. They're
So
like,
they should
it's
tell, like, just, I think it's just so
Interesting.
confusing right now for
It
all
is.
of
It
them.
really is.
right.
And a little
For
scary.
everyone, right? For
Yeah.
everyone.
And sometimes it's okay to use it, sometimes
Yeah.
it's not, like when's the right time
And we're gonna publish these documents as we start to,
Yeah.
like, to share understandings about what we do want our kids to use and what we don't. That's gonna come from district office and district-wide and also middle school. We're doing work on that as well.
Yeah, it's
Any
a-
other
it's a
math
road we're gonna
questions?
just keep traveling, right? I mean,
These are great
It's not going away.
And
conversations.
it's moving like
It's
that, right?
always
Yeah.
moving.
They're growing and it's moving at
For
the
sure.
same time.
So here's something, we had, there are now AI that are like for emotional wellness, like to help students. And I don't know where I land on this. And there are some people who I very, very much respect within the educational world, not just the district, that are saying, you know, it can help students that don't reach out to others to like access ways to improve themselves or manage some maybe hard stuff. However, I have argued, I don't want a screen to get in the way between two humans, right? So there's an argument that the screen is actually well developed and it's limited in how you'd use it, and then there's me saying, but, so, you know, I don't know, it's different for here. I don't know, I don't personally think anything can replace an XPOD teacher saying, hey, are you okay, what's going on? Then someone will push back and say, but what if that child doesn't answer, but would kind of put some, like, utilize, like, there's a really high level stuff being developed that helps kids with their emotional wellness. So that's a whole nother level of where do we go, what do we do? Yeah, it gives me anxiety, but the best thing we can do is talk together and read and learn.
And it's, what are you doing to help the situation right now, and
Yeah.
what are you doing to help them moving forward?
Yeah.
So maybe in that moment, you know, the AI would help them.
Yeah.
But going forward, they need to deal with their teachers and their people.
For sure.
So.
and I don't think that's honestly, I don't think it's just a middle school question.
No.
Like there's actually I want to say it's a lawsuit that's in place right now where there's therapists, you know about the therapists that were using chat in sessions with patients. And then the patients, I think like through maybe seeing them on like the camera move, like could see them typing what the patients were saying, right? So now there's that ethical question. That's with adults. Ethical question around these are, you know, medical professionals are using it, psychologists are using it. So it's really, it's a question for
I also found
society.
myself, I think we're being flooded with what the worries are, which is good to know. There are benefits. I think it's a whole lot of learning together and
Absolutely.
not moving too quickly in one way or the other. So,
And that is the nice thing about Byram. I think
So-
we move slowly.
yes, we do. And here's a great segue. Face-to-face conversations, they take place during parent conferences. So I want to remind everyone of two things. One is, we have team meetings throughout the year. So if you want to meet about how your child is doing, you can call the guidance department and ask for a team meeting, and you get a 20-minute spot or slot whenever we can schedule it, which is usually right away. That can happen throughout the year, and it could be a check-in if you need to check in. We also have parent conferences that come up in the evening, and those are really, so my big change, because my son just got into middle school, was that you don't need to go to, like, you always had a meeting for elementary. You went in, you met with the teachers, it was something. In middle school and high school, we're transitioning over to a little more independence for the students, and we have a different way to approach things, and we can't handle if everyone needed a parent conference, because that would mean that we need to take multiple days off, and it's just not the system we work. So if your child needs a conference, we'll reach out or reach out to us. If you think your child's doing great, you don't feel like you have to come and meet, because we can do it through email, we can let you know if you're worried, but it's a transition in conferences. So we have the conferences coming up, we will send out the link. within minutes, usually the slots are taken, it's full. But that's why I'm trying to say, if your child is doing well and we haven't reached out to you, it's okay to give yourself permission to ask your child, say, how are you doing, hear the answer, and if the grades support it and you think they're doing well, you know, have a celebratory dinner with your child.
Right. So with that, grades are being posted this afternoon. So first report card for this year is this afternoon at hopefully by 3, if I remember. To click the button, which I will because she's going to tell me.
Yes, always.
Again. And then the link that Ms. Lappel mentioned will go out on Monday through Parent Square. And again, those evening conferences, there's December 4th are the evening conferences, and then we have conferences on December 5th and December 12th, which are 2 Fridays. We also have 2 half-days coming up on December 5th and December 12th, where students get dismissed at 11:15.
And that's for the conferences.
And that's for the conference.
Did you have a question?
You meet with individual teachers?
That's a great question. So conference is always in the middle school, no matter what, or based on team. And that's because we speak by team, meaning you don't want one perspective. You want to hear how your child is doing in all the subjects. And so every meeting is with the team of teachers.
Oh, that's good.
And the meetings
Yeah.
are 20 minutes.
Yes. Okay. Good stuff. Thank you. Thanks for coming today. And Lisa, thank you so much for presenting.
Thank you.
And,
Stick around.
enjoy your weekend.